podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Caleb Pearson of Topsheet. Caleb, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me, by the way.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And before we jumped in, I want to read a little bit more about Caleb so you can hear about all the awesome things he's doing. And being in the film production industry for over 10 years, Caleb was able to see the major problem in the film industry associated with the processes behind the camera being 50 plus years old, still working off pen and paper. He reached out to a friend, now co-founder Stanley Yang, who has a background in software development, and they created the company Topsheet, making production admin up to 25 times faster, being more than a payroll service, but instead a platform for end-to-end production admin. Caleb, are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Well, let's do it then. So to kind of kick everything off, I wanted to hear a little bit more about how you got started. Could you take us through what I call your CEO story? We'll let you get started with your business.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So like I said, I started off in production. I was trained by a man named Brian Frankish who did Field of Dreams, Righteous Kill, Stuart Little, Life as a
Nice.
House, and I started producing films because of him, line producing and so on and so forth. And I just kind of solved a nightmare, literally, like just everything in front of the camera is moving at light speed. We have CG and all these other things, and behind the camera, the crews are kind of forgotten. It's still pen and paper. It's still archaic, and just getting a crew paid is a nightmare. So I don't know why we're paying people $250,000 to do a job, and 80% of their job is paperwork. So my whole heart was like, hey, how can we make these communities, which each film set is this community that are comes together for a 6 month to 2 year period. How do we make this better for them, and how do we make life better? How do we make the work hours better? Because right now it's like 14 to 16 hours is the average. uh, how do we solve these issues? And happily, Stanley, I was kind of venting about this to him after a production I'd gotten off of, and we just kind of started imagining a solution for this. And kind of the story goes from there. We started working together. We built a small team together. And our first year was definitely, I don't know if you know the phrase MVP, which is like minimal viable product. We definitely first released our MP, which is just a minimal product. And then we developed it to be a minimal viable product. And like where we're at now is where we have a product that's, great for our users. But that comes from, taking a lot of criticism and suggestions and really listening to our customers. But yeah, kind of the journey has just been is just having a pain, going to solve it, and then helping other people's pains in the process, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny that I always say that's how I define, entrepreneurship at the heart. It's definitely problem solving, a little bit of firefighting and stuff in the middle of that
A little
too.
bit.
But yeah, one of my absolute favorite, and actually the book that I got when I first started the blog was The Lean Startup with Eric Ries. And it was a phenomenal read because so many times we see these businesses like Dropbox as an example, we don't realize where they started. And they often start out with the MVP or MP and literally grow and expand from there. So love to kind of hear, your journey and the way that you all have been able to build and grow that.
Yeah, thank you. That it's been quite a journey. Going off kind of what you're saying there too is like one of the books that really inspired me during this process was is it's called Delivering Happiness. I cannot
Mhm.
remember Tony's last name. Tony H.
H,
He's
yeah, I know
the
how to say it.
I think that's more of what it is. I don't remember how to say it, so I don't want to
Right.
butcher it. But Delivering Happiness is honestly one of my favorite books. As a CEO, because it's focused on the thing that matters most, your customers. Even though I would say not every business believes that, I would say is that's really where it needs to start. Is like you should be solving problems for your customers, and if you can do that, you can build a company such as Zappos, what he did. So
Mhm.
yeah, but yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And a lot of times you have that North Star, you remember why you're doing what you're doing. And I think so many times we can, lose sight of that. So speaking of delivering happiness, I know you have created a better mousetrap, so to speak, for, your clients. Could you take us through a little bit more about Topsheet? Tell us what it is and how exactly it solves these problems for your clients.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in the industry, there's in film industry specifically, you know, companies have these payroll systems. Now, payroll is much more complex than other industries because you're erecting a company that's going to spend, $10 million to $150 million within a few months, So you have these crews that you're hiring and firing within that period. And in that, you have unions, you have, well, around 30 of them if you consider all the locals involved. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of complexity to that. So what had been happening in the industry for the last, 50 plus years had been a pen and paper process of payroll companies coming on as the employer of record, which is a legal term we don't need to go into as much, but
Mhm.
and taking on that burden, and going back and forth through faxes and emails and processing payroll. But the grand scheme of everything is there's tons of these processes going on, from call sheets, which is basically just letting your crew know where to go at what time. Just start forms, crew management, so on and so forth, that really all could tie in together. And so what we do is we kind of solve all these problems. Call sheet, just getting that out can take an hour and a half for a first AD every day they work. And so we brought that down to about 10 minutes, just
Nice.
using smart data. And that's kind of what we decided to do is like, hey, yes, we make our money through payroll by simplifying that, but really all these other tools should be a production solution because at the end of the day, we're serving our customers. So we take the information from the call sheet, since we know which time you're supposed to show up, and we put that into the time card. Like, why do you have to do that twice? We create profiles for every person on a crew set, to where their W-4, their I-9, that information is stored, which with other services, they have to go every time they work. And these guys work on a new project daily, weekly, or monthly, right? And they're having
Mhm.
to refill that out every time a new start packet. With us, they do it once and they're done. So what we kind of tackle is what's a production solution from everybody from the producer down to the lowest, production assistant. And we simplify that through a desktop app and a mobile app at the same time, to where they can fill out their time cards instead of having paper and all these other problems. And, with COVID, we didn't expect that we would have to create a touchless solution, but that's just where we were headed anyways. So, yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love, thinking obviously of the core or the maybe the foundational service that you provided, but seeing that there's other ways you can, improve that mousetrap, so to speak. You can provide a better experience because it's just a natural progression from where you were and what you were building. And you have the data and the tools and tool set to do that. And I think any big company, as we kind of talked about with the MVP, is able to iterate, able to grow, able to expand and pay attention to its clients and its customers and provide that value in those solutions.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just listening to your customers. I mean,
Mhm.
uh, I think a lot of times we when we're creating a company, we get super caught up on what we have in our mind, what the product we think it should be, and we did that too. Let's be real. To be honest.
We all do.
But when yeah, and then you stop, and when you start listening, you start realizing is, oh, if I just do that, and it's not always listening to what they're asking for. It's listening to what their pain is, and then solving
Right,
it the best way. And that's something we had to like be really aware of, because if we just listen to the customer, a lot of these guys have been in the industry for 20 years. They don't want change. But if we
right.
listen to what the customer's pains are, we can be almost like a parent. It's like, I know this isn't necessarily what you're asking for, but I know this is what you
Yeah,
need. And that's kind of where we
right.
need to step in and do what they need. And it's funny, you start seeing adoption. We're like, oh yeah, this is what I need. Thank you. But
Yeah.
it's that first push.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. There's a Henry Ford quote that says, "If everybody would ask me what they would have wanted, they would ask for a faster horse, not a car." So, really, what you talked about is really understanding the pain point and not being caught in the pillar or the kind of focus on what already exists, but creating something sometimes that's new, and even more innovative. So, would you consider that to be what I call your secret sauce, or your secret sauce for your business or yourself personally? Is it that ability to kind of listen to your clients and customers, but still be able to kind of build something and see kind of the vision of what they might be looking for that would solve those problems?
I would say yes, but I would couple that with like two other things. It's kind of a mix of multiple things. It's
Mhm.
definitely being able to listen to customer, but coming from production. I mean, I started off when I was a teenager as a teen actor. I did voiceover and weird things. I have a voice of a child, so I did voiceover and things like that. So and then I moved into production and I did everything from PAing, first ADing, directing, and it was part of it was it just my knowledge of the industry and understanding what I hated. And then bringing that, when I hear a crew member, I'm thinking from the crew member's perspective and their boss's perspective at the same time and trying to put that together. But then on top of that, this weird kind of blessing in all of this, the weird part of the secret sauce that comes into all of this is my team, basically none of them come from a production background.
Mm.
And and as weird as this sounds, is me being able to vocalize and describe something. They're not locked into a mindset of it needs to look like, a time card needs to look like that grid on a piece of
Yeah.
paper. They're coming in
Right.
it as from a data mindset. They're hearing what it is and they're trying to interpret the best way to get that out there versus relying on old systems. So it's this really cool. Our secret sauce is this really cool balance of focusing on production as a whole, understanding the customer, but not being locked into archaic ways, more or less, things that are traditional.
Yeah, and that's absolutely huge. And I almost feel like you need a little bit of both. Like a lot of times when people, especially when they found companies, a lot of times they'll have on, if they're not on their team, they're within earshot, they're on their board or something, of people that understand or have an idea of the industry, because you want to be able to speak to that, but at the same time, not get as boxed in about how it should be in that particular industry. So, yeah, I absolutely love that. And I always say, the best secret sauces are made up of multiple ingredients. So it sounds like you all have a really great team and a really great way to execute that.
There's been so many times where I will present an idea to them or solution more or less to them, and they'll be like, well, that doesn't make sense. And I'm so thankful that they do
Yes.
that because, like, when you're, and for me, I think of myself as, innovative for the most part, but there's
Mhm.
still just things we get caught up in. So yeah, it's it's real.
Yeah, and having a team is so so very very important. And so I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Um, this is a weird one, because it also, it's both my, I'd say a blessing and a curse. You have to diet this one.
Mm.
Um, be the one to pick up the phone, for your customer support. That's been one of the most valuable things. Is the problem is if you do that too often, you'll go down a rabbit trail. But if
Yeah.
you're the one, hey, take a day a week for a couple hours and pick up the support calls. You'll have such a better, and this is what happens with me, you have such a good understanding of what your customers' needs are and where you're failing as a company. Because, engineering and your, in our case, our payroll groups, our accounting groups, all these other things, they're all just functioning in their own little window. And if you're the
Mhm.
one as the owner who can take and then digest and be able to translate to the engineering team as hey, we need this solution. We never thought of it this way, right? Um, it has been not only such a big, blessing for me, just being able to understand where we need to go next, where the customers are telling me what the roadmap is. But on top of that, there's this kind of flip side to that where we've seen customers just be so thankful to actually talk to somebody who who knows the process or can get the thing done. And it's funny being we're more of a platform or a technology. We often get suggestions due to our customer service in that. So it's interesting.
Mhm.
I think there's kind of a twofold thing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially, in a lot of industries where you don't have, especially in tech industries, I think too, when you have that human aspect, you have that caring aspect. We talked about, delivering happiness as well too, and being able to be there to listen, and not, get stuck in the rabbit hole, but figure out and be dialed in enough, I guess you can say, so
Yeah.
that you do know what's going on and you do have an idea of the entire I guess horizon of what you're doing, and be able to communicate to each aspect of that in a different way so that you can get ultimately the solution that you want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you need to be able to have the bird's eye view, and I feel like there's so many things that are fires that you're missing and you don't even know it. Because
Yeah.
I think one of the problem, I'm gonna go a little bit on this, but specifically, I'm gonna talk about support. I think honestly, support is one of the biggest pillars for any company in this day and age. Weirdly enough, especially for technology, because especially as a startup or a small company, you could do that and stand out.
Mhm.
While every other person, when they pick up the phone, they have to search for an email. They have to, they're banging their head against the wall to try to figure out who to talk to. If you can make that easy for them, yes, it's going to take up time. Yes, it's going to take up money. You're going to stand out, and you're going to be able to learn things and do things that nobody else is able to do. And especially as a small startup, um, the one advantage you have is speed. You can make a decision in minutes that it would take weeks for a larger company to do. It was a cruise ship. How is it going to churn that
Mhm.
quickly? So for you to be able to get that support call saying I have this problem, and then you'll be able to talk to them and make it a positive interaction at the end of it, and then take that and give it to your team and saying, can we make a solution for this, and what does that look like? You're going to build a great reputation. You're going to have a great understanding. You're going to be able to move faster in areas the other incumbents aren't even moving. I don't know. That's kind of where my head is with that, anyways.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely huge, and I'm glad you talked about having that quote unquote data, because I think we talked a little bit about sometimes your clients or customers may not know exactly what they're asking for. So when they fill out a form or something, it may not say exactly what they're looking for, but to be able to, as you said, pick up a phone, have a conversation, sometimes you can hear their pain points and realize the solving those pain points may not even exist presently, but you have the team, you have the people in place where you can communicate exactly what that is. And that's where you get those innovations. That's when you really provide that top level and top notch customer service.
There's this great example. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and
Hmm.
I always put it this way: is like my daughter will come to me sometimes and go, "Daddy, I want cake or something." Right? She'll be like, "I want cake," and as a dad, I know really what she is she's bored, she's hungry,
Yeah.
that's basically what it is. And as a dad, I'm able to interpret what she's asking for and say, "Let me give you something that's going to benefit you," and hopefully we can
Right.
make her happy in the process. That's
Right.
probably not cake, unless it's the appropriate time. And so as a CEO or as a company in general, I think especially in any innovation of any disruption of any sort, that is a huge part of your job, is to be able to hear those things, take in that data, and then give them the appropriate thing versus necessarily maybe the thing they were directly asking for.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so huge. And I think that's when those innovations happen, because you have to have, your listening ears and be engaged enough to be able to understand and interpret that. And so I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. And this could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Oh, I'm gonna go with my younger self. Uh,
Okay.
um, yeah, because like for me, like man, just if I understood the process, you know what I mean, a little better. I think the one thing is all of it for nobody is. I'm gonna be real with you. Unless you've run a multi-billion-dollar company, even still, you're probably not qualified. Nobody's qualified to be a CEO for a startup. Nobody's qualified. It's a learning process, right?
Hmm.
And if you understand that, what you can do is you can come in and you can be humble. You can come in, you can serve, you can come in and you can, lead in the appropriate ways and just being honest and saying, hey, I don't know this, but I'm going to find out. I think what I would give to myself is, you know, uh, look look at the areas of how to, optimize things for the people around you too, not just for your customer. So your employees, your team, and things like that. I know if we would have done that as a company, if we would have made that a priority from day one, uh, we would be where we are at, a year ahead of time or more. Just because as a team we're in a more comfortable space. So for myself or for any of you guys thinking about starting up a company or anything like that, think about the people around you and the people who are the employees around you, and optimize for them as well. Um, It'll take time, it'll take money, and you will be stagnant during that time, but it's going to accelerate you so much further when you get steps down the line. And just being humble and saying, hey, I don't know everything in this. I'm willing to learn. That optimizing for the people around you will help you learn quicker.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, because that you'll be tackling problems as you go.
Yeah, I love those nuggets, and it's so funny. I think yesterday I do this gratitude journal, and I every night, and the prompt was something along the line of we're all trying to figure this out. Whether you're looking
Mm,
at parents, you're looking at CEOs, you're looking at startup founders, we all don't know exactly how to do it, and especially during a time like this where
yeah.
it's completely unprecedented. There's no playbook for this time really. So understanding that allows you to kind of humble yourself and really try to provide value and try to provide a really great experience to obviously our clients, but as you said so well, the people that are around us and on our team, because a lot of times they're an extension of our vision and our goals and the ones that we have, and they're right in line with that. And if they feel empowered, they feel quote unquote taken care of, then that allows them to take care of the clients and the customers even at a higher level than sometimes we forget about that.
So that's very real. I love that. That's true. Like there's very few things that anybody's qualified for, right? It's always
Hmm.
a learning process, especially talking about with COVID and things like that. None of us are prepared for this. And
Right.
to be real, if we kind of accept that, it's kind of the same concept I come to when looking at education. I always look at science specifically, and I say it would be so much better if we just taught kids we don't know, because there's so many things that we teach in schools that we just don't know, and it'd be so much better to say we don't know, because if
Right.
we can say that as a culture that we just don't know, we're gonna have people rise up to try to answer the questions.
Right.
Yeah. So like in that, yes, we should be saying, "Hey, I don't know, so let's find the answer."
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, like, especially like we talked about entrepreneurship, that really, to me taps into that entrepreneurship where it allows you to figure out what the solution is. If you say you just don't know, have that humility, understand, I don't know, but I'm going to figure out what the answer is. And that creates that forward momentum towards, those solutions and those goals. And so I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Caleb, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Man, that's a loaded question. Um, I'm gonna go back to kind of what I was saying before. In a lot of ways, um, maybe I'm not going into the full definition, but more of kind of how it feels. Uh, it's it's being a parent to a vision. Um, you have this vision that you're setting out to do, and it's your job to parent the family that's inside of that and lead them to a successful place, right? And as weirdly metaphorical as that sounds, I honestly, when people ask me what that's like, is like when I look at me and my co-founders, like I really feel like we're parents, and as parents we fail sometimes, as parents we succeed, but hopefully what we're going for is we're always growing and we're always net succeeding. Um, and if you can focus on what's best for the family and for the people you're interacting with, then you should have a successful company, more or less. So yeah, it's kind of more of a metaphorical way, but that's just always kind of how I felt.
Yeah, I absolutely love that metaphor and that definition because to me it also goes in line with what you said, for before talking about how a lot of times we get more gratification out of helping the people around us succeed. And as parents, a lot of times you have that same, pride and appreciation when that happens. And so when you're able to have a vision or a goal and you're able to see the family member, the person that's on your team, be able to kind of succeed and sometimes do things that they didn't think that they can do, that's really sometimes one of the most exciting things and most gratifying things. And I think when it's in alignment with the mission and the goal, it makes it all the more better. So definitely appreciate that definition.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I'd give an example. Like
Yeah.
we have a team member that's been a part with us for a very long time, and it's funny when he first started off, he didn't really see himself as a leader, and in this last year, he has in growing in leadership and building him up as kind of that parent, like just trying to build him up, pushing him out to do the things he needs to do.
Mhm.
He has helped our company grow in so many different ways. So honestly, we wouldn't be where we're at without him. And it came to, it is a weird, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way towards him at all, but parenting him and pushing him and growing him and seeing him succeed in that, so that he could take on the vision of the family and keep it growing the same way. I'm
Yeah.
super metaphorical, and I come from a storytelling background, so that's always it's always how it relates. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Well, I think that the beauty, if we all, super honest, we all understand that we're all being parented in some form, shape, or fashion. We all have
Yep.
something we can get better at. And I think that again, going back to that humility and humbling yourself in shape or fashion, you said, he didn't necessarily think that he was a leader. And that's that I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. And I think that's something you can definitely get behind when people have that mentality and when you're seeing people on your team that have that as well. So Caleb, truly appreciate that definition and I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best they can get overviewed and find everything out about you and what your team are working on.
Yeah, you can find out more about our company at topsheet.io. Um, Honestly, I have nothing to sell, nothing to give. We're here to help. And if you know anybody in the film industry, um, send them our way. Even if they don't need payroll or anything like that, we're always looking to learn, and we're always looking to help people in any way we can. One of our mission statements is fostering communities, which doesn't make sense to most people, but our whole vision is each set is its own community. What can we do to make that better? And so, any way we can help, anything that we can learn, we're always glad to do it. So, yeah, you can reach out to me via topsheet.io.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And we will have the link and information in the show notes so that everybody can follow up with you. But I truly appreciate you, Caleb, for all the insight, the help that you gave to us as well, too, and fostering our community as well. Because I think when you're able to give and you're able to see the fruits of those giving and the giving back, that truly goes to an entirely different level. I think everything that we're kind of putting our time and energy towards. So truly appreciate that again. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you so much. You guys have a good one.
All right. And I'll cut it off here. Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh again from the I Am CEO podcast. We had a phenomenal interview with Caleb Pearson of Topsheet, and he decided to hop back on it for the bonus section so we can hear a little bit more about what he does. And he provided a tremendous amount of value and information. But for Caleb, for people that might just be listening to this, Caleb, could you tell us a little bit more about you and Topsheet and what exactly you all do?
Yeah, great question. I'll try to make this simple, but it needs a little bit of explanation. So, I'm the CEO of Topsheet, and what Topsheet is a production platform for the film industry for admin and payroll. We're a digital platform that automates the paperwork more or less, making it digital, streamlining it, and up to 25 times faster in a lot of scenarios. Our whole heart is how do we simplify things for the crews and the admin who are on set, making productions run smoother, save money, and now in a COVID world, even safer. So that's kind of me and what we do in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so valuable, during the interview and hearing exactly how you and your co-founder were able to kind of come up with that and, having that, the synergy really of understanding the industry, but also having that outside perspective of the technology and being able to create these solutions based off of having that really close and engaging interaction with the clients that you have. And I know we talked a little bit offline about how you were able to arrive there and how you were able to, build this business and grow and how you've been able to kind of sharpen the saw, so to speak, in your business and in your life. Could you talk a little bit more about that and your approach to education and learning?
Yeah, I have a weird background. When as a kid, me and my family moved. I don't know. I probably moved over 30 times in my life, and no, we weren't military. That's always the question. It's just it's kind of almost a little more complicated to explain. But we moved a bunch. I lived in Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, Indiana, kind of you name it. And we had moved to California when I was a teenager, and I was going to high school, and basically what happens in California is they don't recognize any credits from that are partial. And I'd moved so many times,
Mm.
almost all of my credits were part credits. So
Oh,
I had
wow.
like 30 credits to my name when I was supposed to have like 300 or something like that
Wow.
in California. And one day, I'm in my senior year, my teacher comes up to me. And at this point, this was probably the best I'd been doing in school my entire life. I was kind of a rebel when it came to a lot of stuff, just because I was going to a charter school that allowed me to educate myself and do come in
Mm.
2 times a week, and it was a great system. So it was like the best grades I've ever gotten. I was getting a lot of almost straight A's, and it was doing great. And my teacher comes up to me, and we had a good relationship. She had tears in her eyes, and she goes, "Caleb, you're not going to be able to graduate."
Mm.
And I go, "Wait, what?" And she explains the scenario to me, and I was terrified to tell my mom that
Mm.
because my mom has a doctorate
Uh,
and she's very well educated, very bright, brilliant woman. And I went in and I told my mom that after this scenario, shaking and palm sweating, and my mom in the car says, like, pulls over the car, looks at me and goes, I believe there's a better destiny for you. So, um, I want you to continue doing what you're doing. I want you to press hard. I want you to educate yourself, and I want you to move forward, and move forward in what you're doing. And that little bit kind of changed my whole perspective, where instead of having to pay somebody to get educated, I was able to go and educate myself. And I was acting. I worked in an agency. I worked at a management firm. Actually, was put at the head of a talent division of a management firm at the age of like 18, 19
Nice.
for a while. And it was literally just because my mom pushed me to see how far I could go. Um, and instead of looking at this as a curse, she and now as on to me, we looked at this as a blessing, this opportunity to take what we're supposed to be doing in college and in those formative years and actually applying to it, trying different jobs, learning about the industry that I was interested in, and figuring out where I fit in, which led me back into production rather than being in front of the camera as I was as a teenager. And when I started developing Topsheet and we started growing this company, I started having this heart for like, what can we do to understand the system better, the educational system better in this field, and making it better for people. I mean, we live in a world where 47% of people who graduate don't work in the field that they got a degree in.
Mhm.
47%. And these are like $60,000 plus things, and then you're tied to debt that is 7.5%, if you're lucky,
Right.
with interest that you can't get out of even with bankruptcy, right? And so you start looking at the system that's out there and it's like, wait, I'm paying, and no offense to anybody who goes to college, that's not what I'm saying at all. But what we're doing is we're paying tens of thousands of dollars to get educated in most fields in ways that are decades outdated. Like in the film industry, they're teaching methods from the 90s.
Mhm.
Methods have completely changed. And we're only getting a fraction of what we're actually wanting, right? If you want to be a filmmaker, how many of your hours are actually going into filmmaking? The rest is going to math, all these other these affiliate things that really don't make a difference. And so this started becoming a problem, and I started saying, is like, what can we do to see more people rise up with paths that are similar? How do we get this hired education where you get paid to get educated versus paying to get educated? And I don't think this is for everyone. Obviously, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be in medical, if you want to be an educator, go to school. Like, you just need
Right.
to go to school. There is some cases like California, people don't know this, I believe this is still a thing, so please look into this. You can actually become a lawyer by apprenticing under a lawyer for a couple of years and then
Mhm.
taking the bar. So there is an
Mhm.
apprenticeship system in that. But for the most part, I would say is those are the fields that you need to get an education for. But if you're in arts or if you're in even technology, you can take a boot camp and learn about the craft that you're interested in. And this has been like just something for me that's been a huge, I don't want to say burden on me, but it has been because we want to see more people thriving. I think a lot of schooling and education teaches people how to follow tasks, not necessarily how to innovate. And if we're going to be honest, companies are looking for innovators. Unless it's just like a write this, we're kind of getting rid of those manual tasks every day with AI, with automation and things like that. We need innovators in the world, people who understand a field who can go into it. So kind of in a nutshell, like where I kind of feel where education's heading is we're heading back to apprenticeship again, with college prices going up, and now we're seeing in COVID where they're paying the same price for college, and yet they're doing it from Zoom. So they don't have the
Mhm.
buildings, they don't have all these things. I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a resurgence of apprenticeship coming up, and we should. Um, and I'm a huge proponent. I want to encourage people is if you're a young person, if you're in high school, I'm not saying drop out of high school. I did not do that by choice. But if you're a
Mhm.
young person, think about going to college. Look around you. Look around you and see if there's opportunities for you to volunteer, for you to get hired, for you to learn a specific craft. Because even when I was a producer hiring filmmakers, cameramen, you name it, I never once asked where they went to college. Never once. I didn't care. Typically, when somebody told me they got out of film school, it would actually be a negative connotation, not only to me, but to people around us, because a lot of times they come in thinking they know what they need to know, and then they're getting completely obliterated because they didn't realize there was
Mhm.
all this thing that they didn't learn. Um, and so like for me, we hired people based off of their demo reel, based off their resume, based off of them being able to show me something tangible. And I see companies, even Google's, I think it was Google and Apple are both saying is they're kind of setting aside degrees as much and they're looking at what the work is you've done. And I would say your work should be your merit. And what can you do today as a young adult to learn the field you want to go into? That's kind of like my a big stance I have these days. A lot of times is just encouraging people as, hey, do you need to go to is it a benefit to go to college, or is it just that stamp of approval? I don't know. Is
Yeah.
it, what are your thoughts on that? I'm actually kind of curious what
That
you're listening.
actually, well, it hits very much so home with me. I do have my bachelor's, I have my master's, but I will say this. I actually wish I had known that about law, about California, because I was on the track to go in law school, took the LSAT and all of that. Had I known that there was something like that, I probably would have been in California enjoying the warm weather like you are. But with that being said, I mean, I think that I graduated, during the economic crisis. So I started to read a lot. I've always felt like, I don't want to say I'm a little bit different, but I feel like I march to a different drum, so to speak. And so a lot of times you may not have the environment around you that helps support that. So shout out to your mom for, being and saying, hey, go forth with who you are. It's okay. And kind of empowering you to be able to do that. Because I think when you have, that environment around you, a lot of times it allows you to be able to do that, and to be confident in being yourself and not trying to be something else. And I think a lot of times when you're going through, school and trying to figure out those things, I think a lot of times we would be better served to know the answers to those questions before we go into college. And often that doesn't happen. Do you need to go to school? Do you really need to go to school? That question that you asked, it's a valid question to ask. Not saying you don't go to school, but it's a
Right.
valid question to even consider, which we don't a lot of times even consider that. We see school as a way to get to where we want to be. And as we're seeing with the rapid changing within industries, a lot of times by the time you get your quote unquote 4-year degree and then you get the job that you hope that you have, sometimes you're not as equipped as the people that have really been working in the position, and working in the industry. So that's one of the reasons I really flocked to entrepreneurship, because I always thought it wasn't so much about degrees. It wasn't so much about the things that you did in school. It was about really practical things like, are you able to make sales? Are you able to generate revenue? Have you been able to, manage a team? Just those things. You can't really learn that as much in a book. You can get better at it. You can learn, you can really, learn that craft and improve, but you can't really sugarcoat that. You
Yeah.
can't, paint that, makeup on a pig or anything like that. You have to really know what you're doing. So it really hits home with me. And I think it's something that isn't talked about enough. I hear it a little bit, especially around entrepreneurship, but I think really doing a disservice to a lot of people, and especially as you talked about with debt, and a lot of the things that people are handcuffed with, where they have to do something that they may not even be, quote unquote, put on this earth to do. And when you
Mm-hmm.
don't really understand that, and you haven't had those conversations, and you haven't looked within, it really makes it hard to be able to do anything but what pays the job, to be able to pay your student loans, to be able to hopefully at someday buy a house, have a family, so on and so forth.
Okay, so you just went into something I completely agree with. Yeah, I love like we were not created, we weren't created to be slaves. And
Hmm.
more or less, when we look at the system that we have today between college debt, mortgages, how everything's marketed towards us, guys, we're all in entrepreneurship here. We know
Right.
marketing, we know how effective it is, right? We have been marketed just like diamonds and all that other stuff. If you research into those, right? We've been marketed that college is the only solution, and we all bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Hmm.
And then what we see is people going into, you're talking about, you graduated kind of during the last recession,
Yeah. Oh, nine.
like the
Mhm.
recession had a lot of things where people bought this fake American dream that was
Tangible. Yeah.
sold to us by corporations.
And more
We were
than one of
created for
those.
purpose. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
We were sold this fake dream, and we bought it, and we still hold on to it. And what we need to do is we need to disrupt that. Like you said, is we were created for bigger things than this.
Hmm.
We can't keep living in this cycle of debt to pay back to debt again,
Hmm.
and I feel like that's that's where I don't want to say corporations, where entities more or less may want to keep you, because that is the
Yeah.
financial cycle. But
Hmm.
thanks to I would say the new generation of startups and entrepreneurs and things like that, I see people who are looking to affect the world rather than trap it. Um,
Yeah.
and for me, if if any of you, anybody listening, wants to affect the world for a better and make a change, you're going to make a company that's going to change the world. It's going to make a lot of money, and you're not going to feel dirty at the end of the day, right? And part of that is how do we break these cycles that we've been kind of trapped in, such as education, such as,
Yeah.
hey, get this house you can't afford, hey, such as,
Mhm.
pay for these things that you have to put on a credit card that you know
Right.
let's break these cycles, let's break these mindsets. And one of the key ones I think it starts with is education. To give an example, real fast, is I have a I had a conversation with the head of the film department of a specific college, and I'm going to leave the names out of this because no way want this to come back on them. But um, uh, I asked them. I was like, "Hey, how do you feel like you are doing training producers through your producers program?" And she was very honest with me. She goes, surprisingly honest, actually. She goes, "I feel like we're doing them a disservice."
Mhm.
Um, we get it was something like, I'm going to misquote it. It was something like 8 hours in total of training on budgeting that they're able to give to these future potential producers. And in that 8 hours, basically all they get to do is train them on the basics of one program, not the logistics of what it takes to actually budget a film. So she basically just kind of lays out is, we don't have enough time to actually do it because there's so many regulations, there's so many boxes to check, there's so many this, that, and the other, and we have such a limited window of time. And she goes, no wonder that literally the first day on set, so the first day on the job, if this is another industry, the first day on the job, they learn 10 times more than they learned in 4 years of college.
Right.
And so with that, it really struck me, these thoughts and these beliefs that I had, that yeah, like this is real, this is a problem, and we're all kind of bought into this belief that may not be true in many careers. I'm not saying all careers, but in many careers it's
Yeah.
probably not true even. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's actually, super powerful. And I think that we almost have a misconception or misunderstanding on what, or maybe I should say all of what education can be, because education can be, going to school, but I feel like that's the only way we feel like we can be educated, which is why, I love everything when we talked offline and we talked a little bit about this topic, because I think especially in entrepreneurship and business, a lot of the things and ways by which you can innovate and grow don't necessarily exist. So you have to be able to be self-learned. You have to be able to learn how to learn how to educate yourself outside of sometimes the books and the degrees. It's not to say don't read those, don't pay attention to the podcast and things like that, but it's understanding that the answers that you sometimes are looking for may not exist, and you may have to pull from different industries like you have been able to do with your team to be able to create innovations that didn't exist before. And I think that only by having those muscles flex and those muscles used on a regular basis will we see a lot of the solutions that we need in this world, whether we're talking about the film industry, or we're talking about technology, or we're talking about restaurants and so many and so on and so forth. We need those people that are able to do that. So I truly appreciate you for talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's real. Like you'll go much further, you'll go so much further if you gather wisdom from a multitude of wise people rather than hold it to a paper that you
Hmm.
jump through the hoops for. And again, I'm not trying to insult anybody for college degrees or things like that they went through. There is value there, but I think the question that we're asking here is the value equivalent to what you're giving? And I would
Yeah.
say probably in most cases not these days.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but no,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think a lot of people, yeah, the prices and the costs for that investment, so to speak, have gotten tremendously out of hand, and those questions are starting to be asked a lot more as people are uh, held with a lot of debt and handcuffed to some degree. So, Caleb, I truly appreciate you again for hopping on this bonus section. Loads of great value again, my friend. And what I want to do for people that might just be listening to this, could you let them know a little bit more about how they're able to get a hold of you and find out about all those some things you and your team are working on?
Yeah, I basically, the best way to get a hold of me is just go to our website, topsheet.io. We have a contact page. You can email there if you have any questions. But other than that, I'm online in different places as Caleb Pearson. Yeah, probably the best place is just through the company at Topsheet. We're pretty easy to reach.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And we will definitely have the link and information again in the show notes. But thank you so much again for hopping on the podcast, hopping on the bonus section. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.